So I'm just gonna talk a little bit about my Korean adventure. So I was just able to go to Korea. Was invited by Dr. Park to go visit, and this seems to be kind of like a yearly thing for me now, which I really enjoy because it connects what we've been doing here with Master Cho, who's been teaching, and then now also we've been working with his son, Cho Young-song. And so the first 3 days I was in Korea, I got some pictures here too. I'm going to kind of go through the pictures. We met up. I would travel with David Wong, Chris Trump, and Dr. Park. So those are three of us there. And Young Song picked us up in his little diesel van, and we cruised around at top speed. And we really did a whole bunch. So didn't really edit any of these pictures, but just kind of going to go through them. So the first farm we started at, and I have all this video, which some of it's on YouTube already, and I'll be uploading pretty much all of it to the internet. But we stopped by a grape farm, and this was pretty amazing. They had the whole grape farm trellised out, and they're growing just amazing grapes. One of the big takeaways that I took from this farmer is that he was putting a whole bunch of carbon into the soil. So everywhere you looked into the ground, you saw biochar. And what he was trying to do was, he said, you know, in the forest, trees grow really well, and there's about 100 years of carbon accumulation. So he wanted to simulate that in his farm. So he just put what he assumed was 100 years worth of carbon down in the form of biochar into the soil. And he runs some fertigation throughout his system to keep this all going. But largely the grapes are all trellised up like that. And he had some world record. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was the amount of grapes on one vine. Something like 30,000 grapes, or I don't exactly remember what it was, but this guy was pretty epic. And they're all trellised, and he has a few different varieties. And he also found out that certain varieties don't like each other. So this vine grows next to that vine, and they won't like each other. But that if he puts a certain variety between those varieties, it's like an intermediary, and they grow better. And we had a lot of discussion on that of like, it's the vines, but also under here, there's like one root per, he was also growing mushrooms on logs. But let's see if I even took a picture of it. No, maybe somehow. But essentially here, you see that vine, that root going up on the right side of the screen? That's one vine going up, and then it's just one vine that covers like the size of this room, going from one root. But the roots were out under there completely, so he was fertigating and irrigating everywhere in there. And we sort of surmised that it's not only the vine tips that don't like each other, it's also that those certain grapevines have different microbes. So not only do you have the tips battling, you also have the microbial battle underneath of these different things. And so it was a great way to start our trip. Here's a picture of his fertigation system. So he has these large tanks that he'll mix up the natural solutions that we have. The big tank is water. That smaller open vessel is where he puts in his Jadam liquid fertilizer made from crop residues. And then as the fertigation's going out, he just opens it to siphon some of the nutrients in. And then he also has that little sprayer machine on the right, which is a little like dune buggy thing that sprays the leaves. So very, very sophisticated farm. This guy was a master farmer. Like I said, he's setting a world record. He has these greenhouses on top. The greenhouses are not for temperature. They are for keeping bugs out. So he had all these plastic greenhouses, and in there is the vines. And you can see the fertigation machine from the outside here. Amazing grapes, really flavorful and really fragrant. And when you're smelling the fragrance of the grape, it means it has a lot of secondary plant metabolites, which are the really healthy things that we need to have in our systems growing. And by growing with the microorganisms, they're able to have that in there. That guy on the right is Ray. He's the translator, works with Young Song. And the guy in the middle there is the farmer himself. So we got to sample some grapes and talk story a little bit. And this is his sign talking about his organic certification. And I got a selfie with him. He's happy. And this sign also has something, I don't know, Kim might be able to read the Korean, but it basically is a super organic certification kind of thing. And then we got in the car and we rode, and then we ate food, and they served us 3 courses. So this was like course 1, table full of food, and then we ate, and then this is like course 3, and by the time course 3 came, we were already done. And then we went to a commercial piggery. This had 80 sows, or 60 or 80, I can't quite remember, and 800 pigs from those sows that they would raise to market weight. I had to wear this jacket to keep quarantine things. It's pretty sweet. I wish you let me keep it. But the pigs are on a sawdust litter system that they inoculate with commercial microbes, and then he feeds the pigs activated carbon. And this is a no-smell system and no flies. So although the systems I've seen here are actually better in terms of no smell, but when he got to this commercial scale and raising this much, he didn't have logs underneath. He just had sawdust that was about 1 meter thick, and then he would inoculate that. But the pigs were all pretty happy guys. I can play a little video for you. You can see them in there doing their thing. And this was a fairly large operation. He had a completely automated feeding system. He had some comfrey plant. It was the first time I saw comfrey in Korea. And then we saw his feed here, where he's actually taking organic feed from China, and then he's fermenting it and inoculating it with microorganisms before he feeds it to his animals. So he'd take that and he'd mix it with IMOs and then run it through his augers that took it out to his farm. And this was his new pig pen design. He's actually expanding his farm, and we get to see his new design. And in his new one, he has this little berm. Can you see that curb in the middle? And he said that one thing, the moisture, when he doesn't have his entire pig pen, because it's not a complete natural farming system, it's using just elements of it, the moisture, wherever the liquid from their urine would seep down, it would seep and soak the entire thing. But by putting this berm in, now the liquid would seep and then go out to the side. And he was able to deal with that better. In our pig pen, there's actually no seep down below. The fungus and the wood chips and the logs absorb it all, and there's no seep. But because, and I asked him, what would you improve on your farm? And he said, I would build the pig pens a little bit better so I can get my machines in there. So it's a very automated process, and this thing is the exact width of his excavator blade. So that he can move the things in and out. Where in our case, we don't replace the sawdust. He does, once he raises them to market weight, he replaces the sawdust. Looking at another one, this side he had a dirt floor, and this is where he's going to keep his sows, which he's going to build those better systems because he's not constantly getting rid of his sows in there. Pretty interesting rebar just welded together. The roof, again, is the design where it heats up with the sun and sucks the air out, so it keeps really good airflow. And he can roll up and down the sides. So even in Korea, when it gets cold in the winter, he can roll it down Because the floor is active, it heats the pig pen. He doesn't have to heat it. And in the summertime, or right now, he had the sides up, so it would get the air out by convection. Took a little bit of photos of that. These are his feeders. He puts all the food in there, and then it augers it into the building. And then we went and we saw this guy here. It's Dr. Nam, Professor Nam, and he was working with the state research, kind of like their extension, I surmised. And he was spraying these with Jadam solution, Jadam sulfur, and he's actually testing liquid fertilizer. So he has a baseline of how much Jadam sulfur he uses preventatively, and then he does it. And so in his greenhouse, he has a water softener. Very important that you soften your water before you use the wetting agent, otherwise it does not work. And then these are his bottles of wetting agent, and the darker bottle is sulfur. So he just had them right there, mixed in, and he had really nice peppers growing. He said that one treatment treats 95% of his any pest that's on there. So he only has to spray twice, and he's completely killed everything. Whereas usually he was saying it's 50% treatment, so you'd have to do 3 or 4 treatments. He only has to do 2 to completely eliminate it. I did see some bugs on there that made that hole, but he's been spraying them, killing them pretty well. And then we got to go see his lab, and kind of this is the hallway, and they're pretty famous for developing a certain type of strawberry that's grown all over. And then I love the Kringlish while I was there. I definitely pushed the button in the sink.
Yeah.
What's that?
And then we, there's actually a second day of touring that we got to see a chicken farm and things, but I didn't load that onto the computer. And it was really cool to see the egg operation, especially how they were cleaning the eggs, where they had about at least 10,000, if not like 30,000 chickens. I can't recall now. There was tons of chickens there, but all no smell, no flies, fed that way. And then we went to a pear farm, and we saw pears the size of your head. And it was really nice to tour with Young Song, because he's really helping farmers transition. So this pear farmer used to be very conventional, but he started using the JLF, where he just takes his food waste and rots it with microorganisms and comes up with a very powerful nitrogen-rich fertilizer that he's using on his plants. And then he was a master pruner. So he trellised these 100-year-old trees that were still producing pears this big. And all those were for export to the United States that he was growing. And they're delicious. And he's also, now he's going to incorporate some of the Jadam sulfur in certain blocks, because he had really good success with the fertilizer. He's now transitioning to use the natural pesticide. But because he's a commercial farmer, he can't just switch all at once, because it's too much risk for him. So it's really nice to see how Young Song can help people transition really easily, like substitute out this chunk of what they're using and that chunk. And then eventually they'll be 100% organic with really low-cost methods. That's what it's all about. Then these guys joined us from Oahu and Kauai. And looks like I'm back at the beginning here. So those are the pictures I have of that there from my trip with Young Song. The other pictures I didn't load on here yet, but essentially we went back to Seoul, and then we were able to attend an international conference where the Korean universities picked people from all these universities around the world and are training them. to get master's degrees in agriculture, basically. So if you want, while you're eating, you can look through here, and it's all their slides and presentations, but cover things like economics of how the World Bank's sheep breeding program is impacting Uganda, or maybe it's Ghana. One girl did a SWOT analysis of the economics of farming in Madagascar. Had presentations from Afghanistan and all around the world of what they're doing and how they're analyzing their agriculture. This was supposed to be a day off, but I ended up attending this, and it was really worthwhile. I'll go to the Dragon Spot next time. And then the next day started our International Symposium of Natural Science Farming. And this was organized at Konkuk University. And there were 4 languages spoken: Chinese, Japanese, English, Korean. And so we had little translation devices to hear real-time translation. And it was really nice to see all the people from around the world. There was a big team from Japan there, really successful growing tomatoes and also papayas. And that farmer is also selling some of his natural farming solutions to people. And then we got to see Sri Lanka, how basically these people were 3 years before they started their program, only 78% of the people had 3 meals a day. Now that their program is like 2 or 3 years into it, 98% of people are having 3 meals a day.
Wow.
So in a real literal sense, able to lift people out of strife and poverty via these methods. And in Sri Lanka, they're really taking this to heart because it's so cheap and the people love it. And they're able to grow really well. Also saw some really good scientific data of the trials they're doing at Konkuk University, where they have some farms near the border that we got to see later. So pretty much a whole day of presentations. I have this book here if you want to check out, see all the slides that we have. I also videoed all the presentations, so I'll put those online as well. And then we got to tour with Master Cho. And we got in this big, they call it a limousine, it's actually a bus. And we went down south, and we went down to Gokseong County, which is a sister city with Hilo. And so we have this partnership that we've really been working on. And they have a whole really nice natural farming learning center where you can go in. I got a pamphlet, I think, in here somewhere. Maybe not in this one, but basically they teach you all the solutions, how to make them, how to use them, and they'll take farmers that want to transition and move from the city to the country and teach them how to farm, how to get into it. And I got to see a BMW, which is bacterial mineral water, where essentially what they do is they pump water up about 15 feet and drop it onto rocks. And when water falls that far, the spin and things, when it hits the rock, it pulls the minerals out of the rock and makes highly mineralized water. And that's pretty essential for us here. If you want to melt lava rock, oxygen is the key, because it pulls silica out, and once you pull the silica out, now all the lava rock minerals are available. So oxygenating your water this way, also including the bacteria in it. And I've been talking about this for years, but I finally got to see one like legitimately built. I built a small one. You need to build it big, apparently. And then we went to a quail farm where they're producing like 1 million quails. And it's pretty industrial in terms of the quails are in these tiny boxes where they just stick their head out to eat. And it's at an angle so the eggs roll onto a tray. And then their waste goes onto this other conveyor which goes out the other way. And they were expanding to include pigs, which they said they could feed the pigs basically the quail waste. They'd ferment the quail waste, and then it would be perfect food for the pigs. They're also building a spot to have cows, where they would have the cows and the chickens combined, and the cow's waste would feed the chickens. So via this fermentation and keeping the microorganisms in balance, you don't have the pathogens present. So one animal to the next, it's already been, not sterilized, but sanitized in a certain sense. These probiotics go in and they clean out the bad guys and make such low population that there's no infection between. So then we got in the bus and headed up north, and I think we did something else in between there. I don't know. I'm still kind of jet lagged. But we went up to the very north, right next to the border, and there was actually like artillery being fired and machine guns and things. And there's still like an active war there, even though it's like truce. And I looked around and all the Koreans were like docile, so I was like, okay, they're not attacking. We got to see this really, really cool model farm where that's where a majority of the Konkuk University people were doing their research. So we were able to see peppers, tomatoes, eggplant, and corn all in side-by-side trials using these different methods. He's collecting tons of data, and it looks really favorable towards natural farming. And when we were there, it's just about to turn winter time, so they're harvesting. But already the tomato plants that we saw had more fruit and still flowering, whereas the other ones were kind of like, starting to wilt from the cold and the weather and such. Also, it was really interesting to see the peppers on their plot looked really nice. Their neighbors that were using, I'm not sure what kind of method, they were all wilted and just kind of dying. So just side-by-side comparison was really nice to see. Also, they're growing ginger, peanuts, sweet potatoes, pretty much everything. And they also had some chickens there that they were doing a lot of research on, as grad students doing research on chickens. And then I'm sure there's more that I'm missing here, but I think that was a pretty good overview. So, anyone have any questions on that?
Drake, the grapes that were grown, were they with seeds and no seeds?
They were with seeds.
With seeds.
Yeah, all the grapes I ate had seeds inside, which they're not true to seeds, so they're grafted. His grapes, and there's something about it that his thing was old, but then the bark was coming off. So he was saying that even though it's old, it's still growing. Like that's how they kind of shed their bark to get bigger. So I forget what, he was setting some world record. Like he was going to call Guinness up the next year and set some world record with this plant. I don't recall what it was.
Do they have edible grapes that we have? Theirs were different. And the skin came off separately and you don't eat the skin.
These ones you could eat the skin because they were tender enough. Usually they peel them, but
they don't have the kind we have though.
They're different varieties.
They're different. Yeah.
Was there anything that you learned that would change the way you make your solutions or impact your knowledge of natural farming?
I think the biggest thing that I learned is that this is like an international thing. There's people from all over the world participating in this. And the camaraderie that we shared with each other was so powerful in those connections. So here in Hawaii, we do our thing. Master Cho came, we kind of experimented and done our thing. But reintegrating back in and bringing that knowledge back. They actually wanted to have their next international symposium here in Hawaii. But I don't think we're ready yet because who are we going to get to translate Chinese and stuff? You know, it's like they did a really good job of organizing it. But seeing that research and really, you know, good hard data. It's printed in this book, and a lot of it will be published very soon. It's nice to know other people are on it. No, we represented America from Big Island. Oh, actually, yes, there was. Chris Trump now lives in Idaho.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Idaho, but his farm is in Kohala that he's really been working on. Oahu, Kauai, represent. Nobody from Maui, unless Chai is from Maui, but I don't think so. I think she's from Oahu.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk at all about what you presented? Just give some highlights.
Yeah. So my presentation that I gave at the International Symposium was on the website that I've been running for the past since 2010. I've actually been running it since longer than that, but I've only kept data on it since 2010. And essentially 53,000 people have visited the website. The average time spent on the website is about 3 minutes, 30 seconds. The average page view is about 2.5 pages. So when those people are coming to the site, they're not just looking at it, they're actually exploring, looking, drilling down into what information's there. And 41% are returning visitors. So people are going, looking at the information and coming back. The interesting thing, also there's a global audience. I probably have it in this book. I can actually pull it up and look at it. But interesting thing, a lot of interest in the Philippines, a lot of interest in Russia, a lot of interest in, let's see, India, Malaysia, Indonesia, Uganda. And actually when I walked into the thing, these guys, these African guys are like, hey, I know you from YouTube. And so it's an amazing tool to reach around the world with this website and what's happened. And the other thing that I thought was pretty interesting is that of the most viewed content, we often talk about microorganisms and those things. The most viewed content is actually the odorless pig systems. So the poultry, raising pigs without flies, no smell, and these systems, that's everyone in there is interested in it. And then of our solutions that we talk about, the most popular solution is egg yolk oil, which is not even used in farming. It's used to heal wounds and takes care of hernias, things like that. You can put it on and it heals those things. And then so egg yolk oil is the top recipe at number 5 of the most visited things, followed by fermented plant juice, followed by indigenous microorganisms at number 7. So even though we're like known for IMOs, that's not necessarily what people want to learn about. They're really about the pigs, especially in these developing nations where they can, run their pigs. Any other questions?
So Drake, the people that visit the website, the countries, you have a percentage like the highest, or the country has the most visits to your website.
Yeah.
Where does the U.S. rank in there?
It's the top.
Top.
So here, I'll just...
In the past 30 days.
So yeah, in the past 30 days, let me read this.
Page 19.
Okay, so in the past 30 days, 1,400 have visited from USA, which makes sense because we get a lot from Hawaii. Also, I can drill down into that and see it's a lot on the West Coast and the East Coast, some in Georgia too. Followed by 223 from the Philippines, 190 from Russia, 146 from India, 79 from Malaysia, 75 from Indonesia, and 69 from Uganda. And that's just in the last 30 days. So, yeah. Okay.
Is that your book? Is that your book?
Yeah, this has all the presentations in it.